Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Moss. I'm a site reliability engineer, and I've been in the tech industry for almost 10 years. In this video, I want to discuss overemployment and why I think overemployment is probably one of the biggest reasons that companies are demanding return to office. I've heard of several reasons in the past as to why companies are mandating that workers return to the office. Number one being that they claim workers are more productive in the office, which I disagree with. I think that there are plenty of interruptions in the office that prevent you from being productive, especially when you account for the commute to and from the office, which is lost productivity. The second reason isn't really being discussed by companies, but I've heard people talk about return to office mandates essentially being layoffs in disguise. So companies are fully aware that some percentage of their employees, when they mandate return to office, are either unwilling or unable to accommodate that request to return to the office. And so they're essentially forcing those people to quit without announcing layoffs or firing people. And then the other reason that I've heard talked about is office space utilization. So companies own a lot of commercial real estate, and since that real estate is not being utilized, the value of that real estate has dropped. So that's definitely a factor in a company's decision to return to the office. Not only that, a lot of the office buildings are located in downtown areas. So when you commute into these downtown areas, the local municipalities are making revenue as well as local stores. People are spending more on gas. It's like an economic stimulus. So most of these sound like factors that would go into a company's decision to force return to office. But I haven't heard a lot of people talk about overemployment being a major factor in a company's decision to mandate return to office. And if you look at this from the company's perspective, overemployment is like the most blasphemous offense. According to a report from Resume Builder, an estimated 37% of remote workers have a second full time job. I think there's likely a huge chunk of this percentage in the tech industry. And what is the only foolproof way that you can prevent people from being overemployed? You force them back into the office. Because there's literally no one who's going to show up to the office with their second work laptop and start joining meetings for their second full time job while they're at their desk. And if it did happen, it would probably last about a day before that person got fired. So if you're working for someone else on the company's dime, that's a huge problem from the company's perspective. The other problem is that there's a risk of leaking the company's intellectual property. There's conflict of interests in the event that you're working for a competitor. Obviously, there's also time conflicts where you might have overlapping meetings between both companies. I want to acknowledge that there is a percentage of people who are overemployed and they have two full time jobs because they're not able to support their expenses and the cost of living. We all know how damaging inflation has been over the last couple of years. But in this video, I'm specifically talking about people who are overemployed with two full time jobs, but they're in like the tech industry or the finance industry, and they're likely making six-figure salaries at both jobs. So they're not taking on multiple full time jobs just to make ends meet. But I think there's probably a fair percentage of these people who are working two full time jobs remotely who basically don't have a lot of work at either job. And that might have been the motivation for them to get a second full time job. So you could argue that having two full time jobs might not even result in decreased productivity if the employee is able to complete all of the work deliverables at both companies. If they're getting their work done at both companies, then what does it matter if they have two full time jobs? What I think is interesting is if you just change the context of the situation a little bit and you imagine that we're talking about freelancers and independent contractors, then having multiple jobs as a freelancer or a contractor is not really a big deal. In fact, if you're a freelancer, it's kind of expected that you're working with multiple companies on multiple projects at the same time. The primary difference here between freelancing and salaried life is that in salaried life, you're just going to get paid no matter what, whereas in freelancing, you're going to get paid according to project deliverables. And so freelancers have had this mindset for decades where they want to grow their business. And so they're going to work with multiple companies as much as they can handle simultaneously. And I think when remote work became a thing after 2020, a lot of people change their mindset to be more like a freelancer. So I don't know exactly what the future looks like, but I do think that this phenomenon that we're experiencing right now with overemployment is here to stay. And I think it will change the dynamic and maybe even the employment agreements that people have, even when they're taking on salaried jobs. I don't know what exactly that would look like, but I do think it will be more widely accepted in the future. From an ethical perspective, overemployment is a pretty controversial topic. If a salaried employee is able to complete their work deliverables in an agreed upon time frame, and then also have time left over where they could dedicate that time to working on another company's project, is that really a problem? But also, if you ask the company, they're going to be like, well, we just want to give you more work. If you can complete that amount of work in that time frame, then we're going to give you additional work. The company's going to incentivize you by saying, well, we'll give you a promotion, we'll give you a raise, we'll give you more responsibilities. But I think for anyone who's been in corporate life, you know that it's kind of just a carrot that they hold out in front of you. And there's literally no guarantee that you'll get a promotion or a raise. And even if you do, most of the time, it's not that great. And if you want to call out the ethics of overemployment, I would point to the ethics of exorbitantly high CEO pay that's hundreds of times more than the salary of the average worker who works at their company. And not just their ridiculously high salary, but also the ethics of their behavior and what they're able to get away with. Just look at what happened with the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank. There's plenty of other examples that I could name. As with most things, I think there's a line of reason that you might cross if you go too far in any one direction. The same goes for overemployment. I've seen some instances of overemployment that go a little overboard, and I don't think the person's really doing much of anything at any of the companies. They're just raking in a whole lot of money, which again, CEO pay. I'm still not sure how I feel about overemployment, but I do support having a full-time job and then doing something part-time. It might be like a side hustle. It might be just like a small business that you have on the side, like an Etsy business. I think it's great to have something like that because you never know when it could turn into something bigger and something that you just move into. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on overemployment and whether you think it's a large factor in a company's decision to mandate return to office. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider throwing a like on it and subscribing to the channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.